Alright, boys and girls, in this video I'm going to be going over a tip for Canadian sellers when sourcing for Amazon FBA. I'm a Canadian Amazon seller. I sell in the Canadian marketplace, and this is a tip that I've discovered myself over the past year of sourcing, a tip that has made it easier for me to find products on Canadian websites and to find them more effectively in Canada to see if I could sell them online. So pretty much, I'll kind of show you an example. I couldn't find a perfect example of it, but I found something similar. And what the tip is whenever you're coming across a listing, let's say it's some sort of liquid or soap or gel or shampoo or food item that is measured in, let's say, milliliters or ounces, or anything that's has like a weight to it. Like, let's say there's a bottle of ketchup, but there's a 240 milliliter pack, there's a 700 milliliter version. So anything that has sort of a metric of weight to it, volume or mass, that is what this tip applies to. So as you guys know, Canada, like most of the world, uses the metric system, and the metric system, the common things that Amazon listings would have in the metric system would be milliliters or grams, because like these handheld shampoos or whatever, things will be measured in milliliters or grams usually, or maybe kilograms. And then the US, they're the imperial system, so their stuff would be measured in ounces, fluid ounces. I think those are the two main ones, ounces or fluid ounces if it's a liquid. So let's say you come across a listing that is has fluid ounces or ounces in the title. Let's say it's like a shampoo bottle, 240 ounces or 240 fluid ounces. What you would normally do is, what I would do is copy the title of the Amazon listing, paste it into Google, and see what pops up. See if I could find it in my Canadian stores for a good price. Now, what I found is if you keep the US Imperial System units in the title, you'll most often get a lot more US websites pop up because you're putting in Imperial System units and it's pulling data from websites that use the Imperial System, which are US websites most likely. Sometimes they'll have Canadian, but what I'm talking about is just generalization right now. Now, if you put the equivalent, let's say like 240, I honestly am pulling this out of my head right now, but let's say like 240 ounces is, actually I'll do it right now. Let's say 240 ounces, the grams equivalent of that would be, put it in, 240 ounces is it's a lot. Let's say 8 ounces. Sorry, that's more usual. 8 ounces is the same as 226 point blah 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 grams. So let's just say 227 grams. Let's say you put the thing you were searching for, but instead of 8 ounces in the title, you put 227 grams. You'll most likely get a lot more Canadian websites to pop up. You know what? Let's just jump into the computer and I'll show you better that way. Here's an example. This might not work perfectly on this specific listing, but more than not, this will work. So let's say I pull up this listing like this, and I'm like, all right, this thing looks whatever. I want to see if I could source it in Canada. So what do? The title has 8 ounces in it. Usually what do? I quick copy, go to a new tab, paste, boom. Maybe I'll take out some of the filler words in the title, but I'll do this here. Let's actually just put this. So only the important stuff. The title and the unit of measurement, so Google knows which size I care about. This is the item. So this might not be a good example. Oh, here it is, Instacart.com. Look, .com, 8.4 ounces, so that's US. These are all .com. So these are all US websites. The only one that's Canadian that's coming up is the actual Amazon listing itself. So what I do in these situations is I go to the listing and I go, okay, I'm not going to type in the Imperial System because I'm in Canada, so I want Canadian websites to pull data and show up for me on Google. And Canadian websites are listed in the metric system. Now, there's two ways of knowing how the units convert. One is manually putting it in, ounce to grams. So 8 ounces is 226, whatever. This is not the preferred way of doing it. The preferred way of doing it is looking on the picture itself and seeing right here, 228 grams. 8 ounce, 228 grams. That's a surefire way. So then what I would do is I would go here and change that to 228 grams, put that in. Now, this a lot of times will show up a couple Canadian websites that didn't show up before. This one, maybe this was a bad example because, okay, eBay, Amazon, so this one it didn't work on. So as you can see, there's still only pretty much US websites, nothing really Canadian popping up. So it doesn't work all the time, but this is a very, very, very good tip to keep in your back of your mind and use it every single time you come across a listing that has the American Imperial System units because sometimes, maybe about 60% of the time, I would say that when you change it to grams or milliliters for Canadian units, it will show up some websites that are Canadian websites, sometimes even big ones like Walmart or something, that you're like, wow, why didn't this show up before? And then you could source from those Canadian websites much easier because you're using Canadian units. Now, another thing I wanted to mention earlier was that if you can't see the conversion on the image, you're gonna have to do it yourself. 8 ounces to whatever. Now, what I have done here, I would have maybe rounded up to 227, but we know it was 228. So when you do this, you're going to get a little bit of error. So in this case, I would have rounded up to 227, or I would have just kept 226 and put it in Google. A lot of the times, Google is smart enough to know if you're close enough. Like if I wrote 227 grams and it was 228, the websites that would have showed up for the 228 would probably show up if I write 227. Like Google's still smart enough to know that, okay, he's looking for the size that starts with 220 something. So if you're off by a couple grams, it's not the biggest deal. But once you do this more often, you'll start to find very common units. So like 8 ounces is a very common unit for an item to be. And the equivalent of 8 ounces is 228. I know that because I'm seeing it here. So maybe the next 8 ounce unit I come across, I know, oh, 8 ounce, the for sure like product equivalent would be 228. So you kind of get to know that some units are just like weird, and you're like, that's probably not the size of a bottle that something would come in. That sounds like a weird amount of units, like 234 milliliters. Like, no, maybe it's like 250, or it'll be like 300 milliliters. So use your brain, try to round up to the nearest 50 or 100 whole milliliters, instead of using something absurd like 197. If I saw a conversion from the US to Canada and the conversion said it was 197, let's say grams, like let's do it for example. Like let's say something was 7 ounces. This is a common number actually. So 7 ounce. And I saw this. I went, okay, I know the Canadian is 198. In Google, I'll be smart enough to not write 198. I'll write 200, because most likely 200 seems like a logical volume of something to be sold in. You know, like why would a company package 198 grams of something? So 200 is a more logical number to use. So I use 200. Sometimes like the 228 scenario is a little unclear. There's not a nice whole number you could round to. Maybe you'll think 230. That's a good guess. But in this case, it was a little bit of a weird number, 228. So keep this in mind when you're sourcing as a Canadian. Use our metric unit system when copy and pasting the product listing into Google to see if you can source it. So that's pretty much the video. Just a little tip I discovered in my sourcing journey. I know it'll help you guys out as Canadians sourcing. So hope you enjoy.